Look, I was really ashamed to say it at the time and ashamed to have to admit. But, I think my learns were to continue to give yourself with heads together was tremendous. So I'm very excited to be able to
Meghan
work on.
Markle arrived at Paris Fashion Week expecting to reclaim her position in the spotlight. Instead, she walked straight into a media firestorm that would expose years of carefully hidden transformations. One set of unfiltered photographs was all it took to shatter the illusion she had spent so long constructing. Within hours of those images circulating online, plastic surgeons from London to Los Angeles were analyzing every detail of her face on live streams and social media platforms. What they discovered wasn't just surprising, it was impossible to ignore. Her nose, her eyes, her jawline, even the subtle positioning of her earlobes against her face. Every feature told the same compelling story. This wasn't the natural aging process everyone experiences. This wasn't good genetics or an excellent skincare routine. This was evidence of extensive surgical intervention, and the transformation had been happening gradually for years while most of the world remained oblivious. The most fascinating aspect of this entire situation is that these changes have been occurring right in front of us. We simply didn't notice the full extent until those Paris photos emerged without the benefit of professional lighting, careful angles, or digital enhancement. The unfiltered reality was jarring, and it sparked a conversation that goes far beyond celebrity gossip. It raises questions about authenticity, the pressure to maintain impossible standards of perfection, and the price of chasing an idealized image that exists only in carefully curated photographs. The Balenciaga show photographs began spreading across social media platforms at an astonishing speed. Within minutes, not hours, the images were everywhere. The glossy, meticulously polished version of herself that Meghan had cultivated over years of careful image management simply vanished. One candid shot, taken under harsh runway lighting, without filters or strategic positioning, revealed what professional photographers and lighting directors had been concealing when experts compared her appearance from 5 years ago, when she was 39, to her current look at 44. The differences were striking and confusing. On one hand, certain aspects of her face appeared more youthful. Her features seemed lifted and more sharply defined. But something fundamental looked wrong. The proportions seemed uneven and unnatural. Her jawline displayed an aggressive sharpness that didn't match the organic structure of a human face. Her cheeks had developed a hollow, sunken quality that simply doesn't occur through natural aging processes. It resembled someone adjusting photo editing software settings too aggressively, except this was her actual physical appearance. Medical professionals noticed immediately and didn't hold back their observations. Top plastic surgeons from both the United Kingdom and California began publicly breaking down what they were seeing in these photographs. One prominent UK surgeon went live on social media and methodically pointed out the lifted eyes, the artificially tightened jawline, and the suspiciously smooth neck. A California cosmetic expert independently echoed precisely the same observations. These aren't results you achieve through expensive skincare products, drinking more water, or getting adequate sleep. These are the unmistakable markers of surgical intervention. The medical experts identified specific procedures with remarkable precision. They noted upper and lower blepharoplasty, which refers to surgical work performed on both the upper and lower eyelids. Her upper eyelids now displayed significantly more visible space, and her eyes had adopted a pronounced almond shape that didn't exist in earlier photographs. They also identified evidence of a comprehensive face and neck lift. The telltale signs were everywhere once you knew what to look for. Everything appeared pulled tighter, particularly around the neck and jawline areas where loose skin typically develops with age. The analysis became even more detailed and specific. Her nose had been completely refined and restructured. The bridge appeared narrower and more architecturally structured, with a defined slope that was absent in photographs from previous years. This pointed directly to rhinoplasty. Medical professionals also noted the shortened distance between her nose and upper lip, with increased visibility of the pink portion of her upper lip. This indicated a lip lift procedure, another surgical intervention that creates these specific changes. Perhaps most tellingly, experts pointed out something most casual observers would never notice. Her earlobes had shifted position slightly compared to earlier photographs. This might sound like an insignificant detail, but it's actually one of the most revealing signs of facelift incisions. Surgeons specifically highlighted this because it's one of those subtle indicators that definitively reveals surgical work has been performed. The position of earlobes changes when facial tissue is pulled and repositioned during lifting procedures. This wasn't some sudden overnight transformation that happened impulsively. What we're witnessing represents months or possibly even years of strategic procedures performed in carefully planned stages. You don't wake up one morning with a completely different facial structure. This required planning, coordination, and a methodical approach to gradually building this new version of her appearance. Each procedure was carefully timed and sequenced to create the cumulative effect we're now seeing, with each modification building upon the previous one. The transformation actually began long before the Paris Fashion Week disaster. Examining photographs from her 20s reveals a completely different person. Back then, she possessed an entirely different aesthetic. Her features were softer, her face rounder, with fuller cheeks that gave her a warm and genuinely approachable appearance. Her nose was wider and less refined, and she had natural freckles that made her seem relatable and authentic, like someone you might actually encounter in everyday life. The contrast with her current appearance couldn't be more dramatic. Then came her years on the television series Suits, and observable changes began accelerating. Her features became noticeably sharper and more angular. The nose suddenly appeared more refined and deliberately sculpted. Her chin developed a subtle contour that hadn't existed previously, and her teeth became blindingly white and perfectly aligned. At the time, the changes weren't dramatic enough to make people stop and seriously question what was happening. But if you examine those photographs side by side with earlier images, the differences become undeniably clear. Hollywood insiders were already quietly discussing these changes during that period. Industry whispers suggested small procedures here and there, a minor rhinoplasty, some strategic filler injections, nothing extreme by entertainment industry standards. It was simply part of the gradual climb from cable television actress to recognizable public figure. It seemed like she was constructing herself piece by piece, making incremental tweaks and adjustments as she moved up the professional ladder toward greater visibility and opportunity. When she entered royal life, the aesthetic shifted dramatically once again. The Hollywood bombshell look disappeared entirely, replaced by a polished, elegant presentation befitting a duchess. The styling became minimal, refined, and impossibly curated down to every last detail. Even her skin appeared fundamentally different. Those natural freckles she had once prominently displayed in photo shoots simply vanished, replaced by an airbrushed, porcelain-smooth complexion that looked almost too perfect to be real. Each phase of her career demanded a corresponding update to her appearance, and she consistently delivered. Her face functioned less like a natural feature and more like a carefully managed brand requiring constant refinement and updating. New professional role, new facial presentation. New life chapter, new set of features. Her appearance wasn't simply evolving naturally the way everyone's does over time through the ordinary aging process. It was being actively edited, deliberately sculpted, and strategically marketed like a product undergoing continuous development and rebranding. The truly remarkable aspect is how gradual the entire process was. The changes accumulated so slowly and incrementally that most observers didn't catch on until those unfiltered Paris photographs forced everyone to confront the full scope of what had been happening over years. A subtle tweak here during the Suits era, a refinement there during the royal years. It all accumulated so gradually that the dramatic transformation only became obvious when you compared the endpoint to the starting point. Her beauty wasn't aging naturally through the universal human process. It was being systematically reconstructed piece by piece, phase by phase, always perfectly synchronized with whatever image she needed to project at that particular moment in her evolving career and public life. Her recent transformation tells an entirely different and considerably darker story. Her professional projects began collapsing one after another in rapid succession. The podcast that had generated significant buzz quietly disappeared from production schedules and streaming platforms. The substantial streaming deals that were supposed to cement her Hollywood comeback simply fizzled out without producing meaningful results. The momentum she had once possessed completely evaporated, and her name, which used to guarantee headlines and immediate media attention, stopped carrying the cultural weight it once commanded. Industry insiders noticed the shift in her status. She transitioned from being someone everyone wanted to collaborate with to someone struggling just to remain part of the conversation. It resembled watching someone's star power drain away in real time, like witnessing a slow-motion professional collapse. The excitement surrounding her projects died down. The phone calls from prestigious collaborators stopped coming, and suddenly, she found herself fighting desperately for the kind of visibility and relevance that used to come effortlessly based solely on her name. Recognition. When someone at her level starts losing cultural relevance and industry credibility, they typically don't accept it gracefully and fade into comfortable obscurity. That's simply not how high-profile figures operate in the entertainment world. They pivot aggressively. They reinvent dramatically. And that's precisely what this latest physical transformation represented. This wasn't about vanity or personal insecurity in isolation. This was about professional survival. She desperately needed to stay visible, maintain relevance, and keep appearing in people's social media feeds somehow. Her career depended on it. Her strategy became clear. She aimed directly for the high-fashion crowd, the Paris runway scene, the elite designer circle that could potentially provide her with an entirely new identity and facilitate a complete professional rebrand. Reinvention has always been her primary survival mechanism throughout her career. This time she went absolutely all in on the polished, elevated aesthetic that screams fashion icon and industry insider. She was gambling everything on this transformation, opening new doors that had recently been closing. But this is precisely where the entire strategy went catastrophically wrong. Instead of appearing like a confident comeback and successful reinvention, it came across as desperate and uncomfortable to witness. The dramatically altered face, the exaggerated sharpness of her features, the unnaturally smooth skin, none of it read as aspirational or enviable. It was genuinely uncomfortable for people to look at. Audiences didn't see someone making a calculated power move and taking control of her narrative. They saw someone fighting far too hard to hold on to something that was already slipping irretrievably through her fingers. Behind the scenes, sources reported that the emotional fallout was devastating. When those unfiltered Paris photographs started spreading uncontrollably across every social media platform, she reportedly experienced a complete breakdown. Consider the psychological impact for a moment. For someone who has constructed literally everything in her life around meticulous image control, watching that control completely evaporate in real time must have been absolutely crushing. She had invested everything in looking flawless and untouchable. But what she saw staring back at her in those viral photographs was a stranger, someone she didn't even recognize as herself anymore. For her specifically, image has always functioned as protective armor. It's the shield she uses to navigate every aspect of public life and professional interaction. When that armor develops cracks, when she loses control of how millions of people perceive her, that's not merely embarrassing or inconvenient. That represents everything she's built her entire carefully constructed persona around completely falling apart. Losing control for someone like her means losing everything, because control is the foundation upon which her entire public existence rests. Her choice to appear at Balenciaga specifically made this gamble even riskier. The brand itself had been dealing with its own significant controversy, and in her calculation, controversy equals attention and visibility. She likely figured that sometimes any buzz whatsoever is better than being ignored completely, and that aligning herself with a major fashion label currently dominating headlines would provide exactly the visibility she was desperately craving. But this gamble exploded spectacularly in her face. That oversized white outfit was clearly supposed to communicate high fashion sophistication and avant-garde style credibility. Instead, it just looked chaotic and poorly conceived. The harsh runway lighting common at fashion shows didn't do her any favors either. It exposed every detail she was probably hoping would remain hidden in shadow or soft focus. The severely slicked back hair combined with that strained, forced smile created an overall vibe that came across as manic rather than chic. She looked uncomfortable in her own skin, which is precisely the opposite message she needed to convey. Social media had an absolute field day with the entire spectacle. Within just a few hours, she was trending across multiple platforms, but for completely the wrong reasons. People started comparing her appearance to everything imaginable. A paper towel roll, runaway laundry that had escaped the dryer, escaped gift wrap trying to make a fashion statement. The memes were absolutely brutal and relentlessly creative. Every single frame captured from that evening became ammunition for people to point out how fundamentally disconnected from reality she had become. What ultimately killed the entire presentation wasn't even the questionable outfit choice. It was her energy and demeanor, that forced, hollow confidence, that empty expression that didn't reach her eyes, that desperate, obvious need to fit into a world that clearly doesn't want her there anymore. You could see it in absolutely every photograph from that evening. She wasn't owning the moment with genuine confidence. She was merely surviving it, enduring it, getting through it by sheer force of will. Then came the truly absurd headlines. Her team's preferred media outlet ran with the headline, "Meghan Markle quietly attends Balenciaga show." Quietly? The entire premise was laughable. There was absolutely nothing quiet about any aspect of this appearance. The five-star luxury hotel where she stayed got leaked to online gossip sites within hours. Her seat placement at the show was perfectly calculated and positioned for maximum visibility and optimal photography angles. Multiple photographers were conveniently tipped off in advance about exactly where she would be and precisely when she would arrive. This wasn't some spontaneous, organic appearance by any stretch of imagination. Every single detail was orchestrated and choreographed for maximum public relations impact. The paparazzi didn't accidentally stumble upon her by chance. They were invited, positioned, and prepared. Media outlets were alerted well ahead of time to ensure that her supposedly low-key reemergence would dominate entertainment headlines within hours of it happening. The whole production was as subtle as a fireworks display. The irony here is almost too perfect to be believable. For years, she has been publicly preaching about desperately needing privacy and protection from invasive media attention. She constructed this entire elaborate narrative about escaping toxic fame and just wanting to live a normal, quiet life away from cameras and public scrutiny. She made privacy her signature issue and built significant portions of her public advocacy around it. Yet watching this Paris stunt unfold, she looked remarkably comfortable with all that attention she supposedly despises so much. The staged spontaneity was transparently obvious to anyone paying attention. A woman who once made privacy and media boundaries her entire public brand just transformed her life into a glossy, perfectly choreographed public spectacle. The whole privacy advocate persona officially died in Paris that evening, because what she's always characterized as privacy was never genuinely about establishing healthy boundaries. It was always about control, controlling the narrative, controlling the images, controlling how and when she appeared publicly. And once that iron control slipped away, the entire carefully maintained act fell apart completely. The fashion disaster wasn't even the most concerning aspect of what those photographs revealed to medical professionals and careful observers. Those Paris images didn't just show evidence of surgical work. They revealed something considerably more alarming: the visible physical toll of pushing cosmetic procedures too far and too rapidly. Her skin appeared thin, almost translucent and fragile. Her cheeks were dramatically sunken in a way that simply doesn't occur through natural aging processes. That jawline appeared unnaturally sharp, as though someone had taken a chisel to it and removed everything soft. This wasn't the healthy glow of someone who's genuinely taking excellent care of themselves through proper nutrition, exercise, and rest. This was something else entirely, something more concerning. People with medical knowledge noticed immediately and began discussing it: the rapid, dramatic weight loss, the hollow features that suggested extreme methods, the weird, strained tightness around her mouth that indicated recent procedures. All of it pointed to what's been quietly haunting Hollywood red carpets and high-profile events lately. The internet started connecting the dots relatively quickly, with whispers circulating about that supposed miracle weight loss solution that's become a celebrity obsession in recent years. The problem is that when you combine that kind of dramatic, rapid weight loss with recent facial procedures and surgical interventions, it creates a catastrophic visual effect. Instead of looking youthful and refreshed as she probably imagined and hoped for, she simply looked exhausted, depleted, and genuinely fragile. She looked like someone who had been through something physically intense and traumatic and wasn't successfully emerging on the other side. While her body slimmed down dramatically and rapidly, her face paid a terrible price for it. That natural softness she used to possess, the quality that made her seem warm, approachable, and genuinely human, disappeared completely. It was replaced by harsh lines, sharp angles, and this disturbing, lifeless quality in her expressions. Even her most dedicated fans, who used to enthusiastically discuss her natural glow, were now reluctantly, admitting she looked drained and genuinely unwell. She probably genuinely believed it was all working according to plan. In her mind, this represented the transformation she desperately needed, the dramatic reinvention that would get everyone talking about her again and revitalize her stalling career. But to everyone else examining those photographs, it functioned as a flashing warning sign, a cautionary tale about someone who had taken things dangerously too far. She crossed that invisible but critical line between thoughtful refinement and destructive obsession, between reasonable enhancement and obvious desperation. What she imagined would be her dazzling comeback moment, the appearance that would silence critics and prove she still possessed star power, transformed instead into a visual cautionary tale about what happens when you chase perfection at literally any cost. When your entire identity and professional viability depend on looking perfect, you end up chasing that impossible ideal until it physically breaks you. Paris didn't just showcase her new look. It showed someone unraveling in real time, trying desperately to hold on to something that was already slipping irretrievably through her fingers. The public response was swift and merciless. The backlash arrived fast and hit incredibly hard. Those photographs flooded every corner of social media, and the comment sections were absolutely savage. People wrote things like, "She looks older, not younger," and "What did she do to her face?" and "She ruined herself chasing fame." The criticism was relentless, and even her most loyal, dedicated defenders were struggling to find something genuinely positive to say. The usual crowd that would typically jump in immediately to protect her just went conspicuously silent. That silence communicated more than any explicit criticism possibly could. The woman who used to radiate authentic confidence and natural poise now simply looked hollow, artificially stiff and profoundly exhausted. That emotional warmth she previously possessed, the intangible quality that made people actually connect with her on a human level, had completely vanished. It was replaced by this plastic, artificial sheen that made her appear fundamentally detached from reality. She looked like she was performing being herself instead of actually being herself, creating this uncomfortable, uncanny valley effect where everything appears close, enough to human but remains just off enough to make viewers deeply uncomfortable. What made people genuinely angry wasn't just the physical transformation itself, it was the glaring hypocrisy of the entire situation. This is someone who built an entire public empire on messages of empowerment and self-love. She talked endlessly and passionately about authenticity and being true to yourself, about accepting your natural flaws and embracing exactly who you are without apology. But looking at these photographs, the contradiction became impossible to ignore. The massive disconnect between her public words and her private actions became glaringly, uncomfortably obvious. Her supporters didn't feel disappointed because she aged naturally. Aging is completely normal and universal. It's fundamentally human. They felt betrayed because she refused to own it honestly, because she preached one philosophy while demonstrably doing the complete opposite. She told everyone else to love themselves exactly as they are, while apparently being unable or unwilling to do the same for herself. That hypocrisy cut deep for people who had genuinely believed in her message and looked to her for inspiration. The backlash transcended superficial concerns about beauty standards or physical appearance. It was fundamentally about the message she was sending to everyone who had looked up to her as a role model. She spent years talking prominently about mental health awareness, body positivity, and being comfortable in your own skin regardless of what society demands. She built this entire advocacy platform around self-acceptance and valuing inner beauty over external appearance. Then she showed up looking like she'd been completely consumed by the exact industry pressure and impossible standards she claimed to rise above. That contradiction hit differently for people. It felt like a profound betrayal of everything she supposedly stood for. This pattern of behavior isn't remotely new if you've been paying close attention. Every single version of her throughout her public life tells essentially the same story. A woman in constant conflict with herself. Every time her career hits a significant rough patch or her public reputation takes a serious hit, she doesn't pause to genuinely rebuild or honestly confront what's actually wrong. She doesn't do the difficult internal work. She simply rebrands externally. New physical look, new strategic angle, new public narrative. It's the exact same cycle playing out repeatedly, just with different surface details each time. When Suits ended, her face changed noticeably. When royal life became complicated and restrictive, her look evolved again. When her Hollywood comeback started struggling and failing, the newest transformation emerged right on schedule. It's always the identical sequence. External pressure builds steadily, public criticism increases, and reinvention follows as predictably as clockwork. You could practically set your watch to it at this point. She doesn't deal with fundamental problems head-on. She edits them out superficially, literally sculpting them away instead of addressing what's actually underneath, causing all the turmoil and dissatisfaction. Medical experts and psychologists have started describing it as image addiction. This constant obsessive compulsion to perfect the external reflection instead of working on developing the actual person behind it. It resembles being addicted to a photo filter, constantly tweaking and adjusting, desperately trying to find that perfect version that will finally make everything feel okay inside. But it never does provide that satisfaction, because the fundamental problem isn't the face or physical appearance. It's everything else underneath that remains unaddressed. You can tighten a jawline as much as you want through surgical procedures, but you absolutely cannot tighten public opinion through cosmetics. You can lift your face dramatically, but you cannot lift your damaged reputation. You can sculpt your features into whatever shape you desire or imagine, but you cannot sculpt how people fundamentally perceive you or what they think about your character. Every cosmetic fix just makes her seem progressively more removed from the relatable, authentic person people originally connected with. The distance between who she genuinely was and who she's artificially become just keeps growing wider. The more procedures she undergoes, the more artificial and constructed she appears. The harder she tries to look real and authentic, the faker she paradoxically becomes. It creates this weird backwards effect where trying desperately to appear genuine produces precisely the opposite result. Her reflection stopped being a sign of confidence a very long time ago. Now it functions merely as this tragic mirror of profound insecurity, a constant reminder that she's never satisfied with what she sees staring back at her. She's sculpting herself into someone she believes people will love, someone she imagines will finally receive the approval and attention she desperately craves. But in pursuing all that, in obsessively chasing that idealized, impossible version of perfection, she lost the person people actually did love initially, the one who didn't need all the surgical work, the one who was enough just exactly as she was naturally. At the end of the day, none of it actually works or provides what she's seeking. She doesn't want natural evolution. She wants a complete eraser. Think carefully about that distinction for a moment. Evolution means genuinely accepting change, growing authentically with it, allowing yourself to become something different naturally over time. But an eraser is fundamentally about deleting, removing, pretending the previous version of yourself never existed at all. That's exactly what's been happening here over these years. Every single tweak, every medical procedure, every physical modification strips away another piece of who she actually was authentically. It resembles watching someone slowly erase their own fundamental identity, line by line, feature by feature, until the original person is completely gone. Now there's barely anything genuinely authentic remaining. It's all been surgically removed, professionally reshaped, and systematically reconstructed into whatever version she believes will work this time around. Each cosmetic fix pushes her further away from the woman people originally rooted for and supported. That relatable quality she used to naturally possess has vanished entirely. That warmth that made her seem approachable and human has disappeared. That indefinable spark that made her genuinely interesting in the first place has been completely edited out through procedures and interventions. She's transformed herself into this strange paradox, where the harder she tries to appear genuine and real, the more artificial and plastic